Good evening. Welcome once again to Livestream at the Upper Room. My name is Ron Strand, and we're glad that you're joining us tonight. If it's your first time joining us and you're watching from either Dan Rupple or Bob Bennett's feed, you're seeing a face that you probably haven't seen before. My name's Ron Strand, but I already said that. And I am the founder of the Upper Room Presents, which is a Christian venue in Orange County, California. We do concerts, we do comedy series, we do speakers of note on a once per month basis in kind of a nightclub, I use that word, but it's kind of a club setting outside the walls of the church, but it's decidedly Christian. And if you haven't been there, you can't go right now because we're still not able to use our venue because of COVID. But as soon as things clear up, we hope to be back to our regular monthly events. But in the meantime, check us out on our website at theupperroompresents.com. That's theupperroompresents.com. If you would like us on Facebook, and you could also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Both are on The Upper Room Presents. And so if you're watching from either Dan's or Bob's page tonight and you want to follow us as well, you can just go ahead and like us. And we're going to be also taking questions tonight at some point. We're going to try. This is going to be a fun interview, guys. But we're going to try to get some questions in as well. So start typing some questions in. And we're going to get right to it because, as you know, the hour goes so doggone quick. And we're going to get right to it. But I'm going to bring them both on together, but I'm going to introduce them separately. But from 1977 to 1992, through 15 years of doing concert tours and doing best-selling comedy albums, done radio and television appearances. He is the pioneer of the sketch comedy group Isaac Air Freight, and went on to supervise some of the most notable American television shows. And he's been around the block a few times, a wonderful guy. He's now the CEO of Master Media International, and we're going to talk about that as well. Would you welcome my friend, Dan Rupple? There he is. Hey, Dan.
Hey there, Ron. Thanks so much for having me and connecting me to another old friend.
Yeah, another old friend. Do you think we should bring him in?
I think we should.
Okay, well, we'll bring him in. CCM Magazine named his album Matters of the Heart Album of the Year in 1982, and among the top 25 best-selling, top 25 CCM albums of all time. The magazine also ranked Lord of the Past, which is another one of his albums, among the top 100 CCM albums of all time. He's recorded over 11 albums and has traveled the world as a troubadour for Christ. Would you also welcome my good friend, Bob Bennett? There he is. Bob.
Hey, how you doing, you guys?
Do you guys know each other?
Yeah, we met.
Oh my goodness.
We haven't talked to each other in a few decades. We had a falling out. I think it was about the color of Jell-O or something. It was something really critical.
This is a real Martin Lewis reunion moment.
Yeah, it is. All we need is the telethon. We just need the telethon.
You'll never walk. Okay, I'm ready.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm glad you only sang that part because I think if you sang more, Ron would have to pay royalties.
Yeah. Anything over 20 seconds, I think I have to pay royalties. But for those of you who don't know these two individuals, these guys are lifelong friends. They go back to. We're gonna explore that. You guys go back to, how old were you when you met?
We were 11, right, Bob?
11 or 12, and I finally realized today, Dan, as we were texting a little bit back and forth in prep to do this with Ron, the reason I keep saying 10 years old, and that's too young, is because that's when I started playing guitar. And of course, that was a pretty seminal event in my life. But meeting and knowing Dan is like just as important as me having a guitar on my hand all these years. So I kind of conflated the two, but Dan's right. It was either 11 or 12 years old.
Yeah, whatever sixth grade is. We were in sixth grade.
That's right.
And Bob and I went to different elementary schools, but we both tried out for the Downey Civic Light Opera or Children's Theater play, Annie Get Your Gun. And we both got cast in it as just, villager number 3 or something. But, but we struck up immediate friendship. And then after summer, we went to the same junior high. And then that's what really started solidifying our relationship and our friendship. It goes all the way back to then.
So what is it that well, I don't say attracted you guys to each other, but what is it that you guys saw in each other that said, "Hey, I want to be this guy's friend"?
I mean, he didn't really make fun of me or anything, so that was kind of the first thing.
That was novel.
that was like,
you got a low threshold for friendship, Bob.
I kind of like this guy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say all these years later because I've had the aggregate of so much experience and I know him so well. But I would say if I would try to get into my 11 or 12-year-old head about Dan, he creative, friendly, personable, a lot of the skills that he brings to his current work and all of the things throughout his resume, he's the quintessential kind of people person. And so he was that to me. And so I think there might have been some music in there because his brother Bob has been a lifelong musician and guitarist.
Yeah.
Dan is one of the 2 or 3 people I know that's kind of a Beatles savant. And so I'm sure that we were attracted to a lot of those commonalities back in the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think primarily we just got along. We kind of thought alike and everything, but both Bob and my 2 of our real passions is comedy and music. And so we shared that so we could talk about, the real gem on it, obscure gem on an album. And we'd both be aware of it, or a comedian or a funny movie or something. And we were also this kind of friendship that we could finish each other's comedy sentences. Yeah, right. And we knew what it would take to crack each other up. And that all began in junior high way back then.
That was part of the mission. If you can crack the other guy up, it's been a good day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You both grew up in Downey, California, and went
home of the Apollo.
The what? The home of the Apollo. And
Unlimited.
Was it one of your fathers or both of you worked?
Yeah, my dad was an engineer on the Apollo program. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Wow. And my dad worked in aerospace as well. There were lots of, you could throw a rock and hit an aerospace company in that general area back in the late 50s, early 60s. It was basically aerospace and orange groves, for a good long time in Downey.
Yeah.
And so both our dads were involved in that.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in just a neighboring township from you guys in Pico Rivera. And
right next door.
Right next door. Yeah. And then my folks actually moved to Downey when I was a senior in high school, but I never went to high school in Downey. But I know Downey very well. Home of the Carpenters, right?
Yes.
Exactly right.
Aaron and Richard Carpenter.
In our, I guess it'd be our early college years, Bob and I worked at Licorice Pizza Records in Downey.
Oh, sure.
And Richard Carpenter would come in quite frequently. That's where he got his vinyl.
Is that right? How cool.
It was almost like Elton John at Tower Records up in LA, kind of similar, because Richard Carpenter would come in and he would literally walk out with armloads of albums.
Yes. Did he really? What was his musical likings? Do you remember?
The Beatles, polar opposites, the Beatles and Zappa. I remember one time he came in and, like Bob said, he literally went over to the Beatles bin and just took the entire catalog under one arm. He went over to either Zappa or Mother's Invention, same thing, and he took as many he could get on, and he took those 2 big loads and just dropped them on the counter, and they were ringing them up,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I wouldn't have figured him for that kind of music, but
no, but he was a really nice guy.
He was a pretty eclectic guy, as I remember. If you dig into he's a lot hipper and a lot more aware than his recorded output would suggest in terms of his eclecticism, kind of.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Well, let's break this down and let's explore this, because you guys have some real similar parallels in your life. But okay, so you're what age are you at now when you're at Licorice Pizza? You're teen years?
Well, that was after high school. So yeah, we were probably 19.
Yeah,
somewhere in that realm. The real change, Ron, happened in high school. Because what happened is Bob and I, we sang together in junior high. We sang at a few talent shows and, a concert in the gym at the school and everything.
Yeah.
But then, I really felt as I went into high school that Bob was really holding me back musically. He wasn't that talented. He couldn't play guitar very well.
Yeah.
And I knew I was destined for musical greatness.
Yeah.
So we go into high school, and seriously, I fell in love with comedy improv.
Yeah.
I was introduced to it in my sophomore year at Warren High, and I just fell in love with it. And that's when I started a comedy group, which eventually that's another story, led to Isaac Air Freight. But it was Bob already. I mean, I want to tell you a quick story, Ron. In 6th or 7th grade, maybe 7th grade, Downey had a little talent show at Apollo Park. And there was the cutest but lamest acts. I remember the Monkees had just come out, and they were singing. These two girls were 11-year-old girls lip syncing to "I'm a Believer," and they lip sync the entire thing with their backs to the audience. Which, why you would lip sync with your back to the audience, I don't know.
Well, they weren't.
It's an artistic decision that no one understands.
Yeah.
But
then whenever the line came when Mickey Dolenz said, "Then I saw her face," they would turn around and they had masks on. Okay, that's the caliber of talent.
Yeah.
Then Bob gets up there, and he's awesome. I mean, he's just all over the guitar. This is a 12, maybe 13 years old. He's all over the guitar, and he's got these unbelievable vocals, and everybody's just going, "Whoa, I better rethink I'm a Believer."
So you followed a bad act of the Monkees, Bob, and you killed it. Wow.
Yeah. When I was a kid, my older brother Mike is 8 years older than I am. He was then and still is now. And he taught me to play guitar when I was 10. And then, very uncharacteristic for an older brother, 8 years older, almost like a parent figure, he took me out to various music clubs back before the Ice House was ever a comedy club.
Yeah.
Like the Ice House in Pasadena, the Mecca in Buena Park, the Troubadour, the Prison of Socrates, the Golden Bear, all these different venues were either in the middle of the folk boom or kind of on the edge of the transition from folk to folk rock. And I got taken out to all these clubs and listening to all this music. So in the same way that Dan was falling in love with comedy, probably based on what you were hearing on records, seeing on TV, theater, I'm sure it all fed in. Mm-hmm. And I've got the same thing going. I've got this incredible apprenticeship by vinyl records and by going out and hearing live music.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because in prepping for this, and it didn't even dawn on me, but I realized that you guys had a life before you became believers, and you did comedy before you were a Christian, and Bob, you did music before you were a Christian. So, Bob, music-wise, what were your influences and what were you doing before the Christian stuff?
This is an easy question to answer. I essentially wanted to be Jackson Browne Jr. That was my goal, because I'm listening to all the great, after the Beatles came along and the seismic shift of everybody writes their own songs now. Yeah. Then there was the singer-songwriters, James Taylor, Joni Mitchell, Stephen Bishop, all these people, Paul Simon, all these people were writing and performing. And so that's what I wanted to do. I was listening to all these guys. I wrote my first song with my mom as a uncredited co-writer when I was 10 years old, and I started writing songs immediately. I was the kid who, even before I started playing guitar, I was walking to school singing songs that I was making up. Right? I could hear it all in my head.
No kidding.
And so that was kind of what got me started. But then, by the time high school rolled around, and I have to be honest, I did make the causal connection that some musicians, not this musician, were actually able to apply their music talent into a good connection with females. That did not happen to me, which I believe in a way kind of gives me a real pure motive for sticking with it all these years. But but it did cross my mind.
Yeah. So you were writing mostly love songs then? Is that what you were doing?
Lots of unrequited love, and that was easy to write because I was living the dream.
Yeah, well, and for a 12-year-old, you've lived that kind of experience, so you've got a lot to write from there, right? And,
sure. Yeah.
And then Dan, train with the Groundlings or with Second City or anything like that?
Oh, we were way before that. I mean, Second City was in Chicago then, but Saturday Night Live wasn't on. The Groundlings, none of that was in Hollywood yet. And what we did is, I was about 15 or 16 years old, and like I said, Ron, I fell in love with comedy improv. So in the theater department, they formed a improv troupe that we would do shows in the drama room. And it really was a hit. And I thought, I'm going to form a regular group. And so we did, and we started playing high school assemblies. We played Gar High and Downey High and, probably Pico Rivera, maybe, I don't know. But then I got real bold, and you could say a little stupid. I said, why don't we drive up to Hollywood? They had just opened the Comedy Store. And why don't we start playing the clubs? Now, I'm a kid. Yeah. So I had to lie about my age, because they served alcohol. And we started playing the Comedy Store, the Ice House, the Troubadour. Let's see, Laugh Factory wasn't open yet. The Improv wasn't open yet. But some of those clubs, the Ash Grove, some of the ones Bob had mentioned. And we were doing really well. And this went into the college years. And we were opening for Lily Tomlin and other people who eventually went on to Saturday Night Live. And it really got very, very successful. By that time, Bob and I had graduated from high school, and we moved in together in a kind of crash pad in the middle of Downey.
Yeah. So your comedy at that time then was not Christian based. What was kind of the theme of your comedy?
It was, the stuff of the era, Firesign Theater, Cheech and Chong, some of those kinds of groups. Albert Brooks was a huge influence.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
Really esoteric, kind of the hippie generation, rock and roll type of comedy.
Yeah, yeah. And this is okay. So you guys are you're in college. You graduated from college. You're in college, and you're roommates together. And I understand that some things happened in that house, and what was birthed in that house in terms of.
Well, what happened is it began with me. I started going on a spiritual search, and I looked into the Baha'i faith. I looked into spiritualism, and the whole time Bob's kind of going, "What's he doing?" And then finally, I was alone in my bedroom one night, and I heard this voice say, "Read your Bible." And I had a Bible because my parents made me go to Sunday school class. And I looked up, I wanted to see the most red I could find because I thought that was the source. That's the only thing I remembered about the Bible is the red stuff is Jesus. So I went to the Sermon on the Mount, and I only read the first sentence, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And I just convulsed and fell on the floor. And I said, "God, I don't know all the ramifications, but I think that's my problem. I'm bankrupt in spirit. Everything else is great, but I'm empty in my soul." And I received Christ that night. And a quick little story of how Isaac Airfreight came about is you referenced or you asked what we did in clubs. Well, what we did was kind of raunchy. So I showed up at the next rehearsal to say I'm leaving the group. And I think Bob was there that night, probably in our living room. And I said,
"You weren't the same partners that came into Isaac, though."
Yes, those were the guys. Yeah.
Okay.
So I said, I'm going to leave the group because I've become a Christian. I turned to my one partner, Dave Toole, and Dave says, "Well, since the last time we got together, I became a Christian, and I was going to leave the group tonight." And then we turned to my longtime friend, Larry Watt, and Larry said, "Last week I rededicated my life to Christ."
Oh my God.
And so we just said, wait a minute, maybe we can do the ultimate oxymoron Christian comedy. And that's what birthed Isaac Airfreight.
No kidding.
It was right there, that moment.
No kidding. Wow. That's quite remarkable that all three of you guys came to faith.
It was miraculous.
And I'm kind of that, I tried to be funny, but I'm kind of the Pete Best of Isaac Airfreight. They got rid of me. I was never a part of it. A funny story, though, until they worked out a complete sort of like self-serve, we can do the sound cues ourselves. I was the guy who triggered the sound carts at a lot of their concerts, the sound effects and things.
Oh, is that right?
I would travel with them and sitting back, and I knew everything that they were doing.
Right. And not only that, we got a free opening act.
Yeah, that's right. I would either open with a couple songs or do the machine or both.
Yeah. And so, I understand that you have some, you did some of the voicing or voices in some of the Isaac albums, though, Bob. Did
Yeah,
you?
he let me in and let me do some stuff, and was very encouraging about that. It was a lot of fun to do.
Well, I'm gonna just read this because this is something that Dan, you sent to me today, because there's so many parallels, and I do want to get back to kind of some of the specifics in there. But let me see where I put it on my notes here. But you guys, let's see where. Okay, so what became there was the first time this Dan was there for the first song that I wrote as a believer.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
The first batch of songs I inflicted them upon him before anyone else heard them.
Yeah.
As well as my first Isaac Airfreight Christian comedy sketches. Bob read it because I tried it out on him. It's like, Bob, is this funny?
Yeah.
And so we both did that. It was, back and forth.
Yeah. And but what you had written to me today, and I was reading from the wrong page there, but I'm going to read this. So Dan, you said this: I got married, and then Bob got married. I had a son, then Bob had a son. I had another son, and then Bob had another son. I had a daughter, and then Bob had a daughter. Bob, were you just trying to were you just trying to live vicariously through Dan, or what?
It was just an elongated game of keeping up with the Rupples. What it was.
Okay, and then you said that I left Isaac Airfreight after 15 years. I had no idea you guys were together that long. On a Sunday following the Monday, and the following Monday, Rich Bueller asked me to host the morning show, and you said what?
I said, I will if Bob Bennett can be my co-host. And
wow.
Rich knew Bob and really was fond of Bob. And he said, absolutely. And and we had
until he called me and proposed it to me, I had no earthly inclination toward this at all. I'd been on the receiving end of a lot of interviews and a lot of radio. So I didn't feel uncomfortable in front of a microphone. But I had never done the role that he was proposing that we both do.
Yeah. Okay, so let's back up a bit. And you're living together in Downey, and you're both kind of pursuing your career now. But who got the recording contract first with Maranatha Music?
Dan.
Isaac? Dan?
Yep. Isaac Airfreight. Yeah. Okay.
And so how did you pitch that to? Did they come to you? How did that all come about? Because they weren't doing any comedy stuff at the time.
No. Tommy Coombs, our mutual friend, had a lot to do with it. But what happened is Isaac Airfreight, maybe Bob too. Maybe you came with us, Bob. But we were brand new believers. We go to a concert. I think it was Gentle Faith at Calvary Costa Mesa, and we saw it, and we noticed that every time one of the guitar players would say something remotely funny, like "I dropped my pick," the place would howl. And we thought, what if we got up there and did our show? We were successful in clubs, so we went backstage afterwards, and musician Malcolm Wilde had just arrived like a week before from England. Yeah. And we met him, and he said, I'm starting a musicians fellowship on Sunday afternoons at Costa Mesa. And he says, I don't know anything about comedy. I've never heard of comedy, but why don't you guys come? And then he took a chance on us, and he had us do a 15-minute set in the musicians fellowship. Yeah. And people just really thought it was funny. And then they told, I think in those days it was Jimmy Kempner. So we opened for Odin Fong of Must Seed Faith.
Sure.
And then it just killed. So then a few weeks later, they had us open for Keith Green. And that was when Keith was just exploding.
Yeah.
And in fact, he was exploding so much, they had to have 2 shows that night. And they broadcast them both on KYMS, as you know, Ron, in those days. And so we went to like instant fame. Because we piggybacked on Keith's crowd, and it just took off from there. And we were touring almost overnight. And then Tommy Coombs and Chuck Fromm called us and said, you got to sign a contract. We got to do comedy albums. No one has ever done it.
And so those albums became very, very successful.
Yeah, I remember I had a talk with Chuck Fromm, and in those days, we always say before Amy. You know, once Amy Grant came, the whole game changed. But back then, it's like if you sold 30,000 units, that was like triple platinum. You know, that was amazing because a lot of them you sold out of the trunk of your car. And so we were kidding with Chuck Fromm, and we said, we're going to sell 100,000. And he said, you do that, I'll give you your own office. Well, our first record sold 150,000. So, he never gave us the office though.
He never gave you the office. Yeah. Well, okay. So then, Bob, you, how much longer after did you get signed at Maranatha?
It wasn't too much longer. As it turns out, I actually went to work for Maranatha Music, and for a brief time,
I remember that.
I worked in the office, and I did a lot of. I was hired to listen to all of the unsolicited cassettes that Tommy didn't have time to listen to.
Oh, is that right?
But eventually what happened is they realized that I was good at organizing information. And so when they would begin assembling an album, I would be the guy that would chase down the players, the credits, the writers, all this stuff. And I would assist the art director at Maranatha with assembling the inner sleeves and the copy for records. So in fact, I wrote my first and only foray into writing liner notes for real, with an actual like a critic would put a liner note on an album like they used to in the old days.
Yeah.
I wrote the liner notes for The Misfit, which is Eric Nelson and Michelle Pillar's completely seminal album, still so great to this day.
Yeah.
So so as a result of me kind of being in the vicinity, and also my vicinity to then the Saturday night concerts with Jim Kempner, then in the encouragement of Malcolm Wilde and the Fellowship, same thing. Then they eventually said, we'd like to do an album with you. And that my album came out in late 79, I think is when it came out. I think Dan's was earlier that year.
I think
or was it 78? I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but definitely he had blazed the trail, and
a
living room full of funny vinyl until we finally got a living room full of music vinyl.
Well, I recall very, very vividly both of your albums coming out, and at the time I didn't even know you knew each other, but they were both just incredibly. I mean, Dan, you pioneered sketch comedy in a Christian setting. I mean, that just wasn't being done.
Well, you know what it is, Ron, is I've done so many interviews through the decades.
Yeah.
And often people say, well, there was no comedy in the church before Isaac Airfreight.
Right.
And they're not really saying it properly. What it is there was comedy in the church, but it was very in-house stuff. Yeah. You know, they were talking their own language, and it was like little skits at around the fire at youth camp, or maybe Sunday nights or something. But see, we came from clubs. We did not come from the church. We were not raised in church. We didn't come from a church sensibility, but we came from a comedy club, kill or be killed sensibility. So we came with that sensibility, and that's what made us unique and new, because we were culturally relevant to the culture outside of the church.
Yeah. I was going to read you this quote from Bob Mayab in CCM Classic blog, and this is about Isaac and about Dan, and it says, "Truth be told, Isaac Airfreight was many years ahead of its time, as you will discover as you listen to their best work, and their sketch comedy was for the most part a first for Christian music genre. While it may be true that both Wendy Bagwell and Jerry Clower came before Isaac, those two gentlemen did stand-up, while Isaac did long comedy sketches and skits, and they were very good at their craft." And that was a direct quote from him. Oh, so you guys were really very, very much pioneering that whole genre. And I don't know that I guess there's a lot of churches do some little things that kind of help the sermons and so forth, doing some acting things, not so much comedy, but I don't know that I've seen a whole lot of it since Isaac.
There's not a lot of sketch. There is some more than there was, in those early years. But Christian comedians, which in 2002 we started the Christian Comedy Association. Yeah. I was one of the founding. In fact, I was the chairman, And out of that birthed such amazing talent, a lot more talented than me, the Michael Juniors and the Tim Hawkins. And I mean, just real talent came out of the beginning of that way back in 2002.
Yes. Well, talk about other Christian comics. I'm going to bring in a little comment here that because you both know Robert G. Lee, our friend. And this is what Robert said. I recall the last time I saw Bob perform at the Upper Room, several women threw their panties on stage. Don't tell me Bob's not a chick magnet.
All right,
leave it to Robert G. Way to go, way to go, Robert.
What a blessing, pal.
Yeah, well, in the Christian realm, we don't throw panties. What do we throw prayer cloths or something like that?
Yep. I don't know. That's funny.
Oh my God. Yeah. But so going back, I don't know how to recover from that one, but going back from
you're on your own. Dan, how you doing?
Yeah. I don't even know where I was going with that, but I know where I was going. There's just so many Christian comics out there now that you really kind of paved the way for.
Yeah, and I really had the honor of really being mentors. I think too strong of a word, but at least an encourager to a number of them. Able to just give them a little bit of advice of some of the mistakes we made, and a lot of them are real close, dear friends today.
Yeah,
we know the one thing that Dan did in concert with Dave and Larry, with Isaac Airfreight, is that I don't want to get too esoteric into this, and you know me well, you've heard me say this before, but when you're doing something in church and you're doing something that communicates a message, you don't want to put the message cart before the artistic horse. In other words, you want to make sure that you're doing your art well, and then the organic result of that is going to be the communication of an important message. If people are feeling like they're being hustled, even if they're being hustled by talented people, they're not going to like it. But what Isaac Airfreight did so well, and what Dan has always been about, is to make sure that the work rose to a particular level, so that then even people who were quite irreligious could understand how funny these guys were and how they were the real deal.
Yeah.
So I think that's what made Isaac Airfreight so good. And then guys like Robert G. Lee and stuff, they're really adept at keeping the order of things right, if you will. If that's the not
absolutely. But I also have to say the same thing about Bob. There was some really great seminal Christian bands and musicians and etc. But Bob really raised the bar, especially in songwriting, and there were those talents out there. And I use that word loosely, that, had this mentality of, well, it's good enough for the Lord, and it's okay. The Lord gave me this song, and I hope you're blessed. But they didn't really put much work into their craft of it. And they just thought, if I sprinkle in a few Christian words, it's good. And Bob really raised the bar and challenged all Christian singers and songwriters to write a masterpiece every time. Yeah. You're not going to do it every time, but try to. And he was in the same league as his hero Jackson Browne and Paul Simon and Crosby, Stills and Nash and these guys. I mean, he was doing, like I said, when he was 12, he was doing that kind of work.
Well, that raises a good point. And as we're talking, Maurice is going to fly in some various photos from you guys from the past. But one of the things from doing the Upper Room for the past going on 11 years now. Actually, my gosh, last month was 11 years. Because we weren't meeting, it didn't even dawn on me. But is that there's so many of you guys that do your craft so well that if you weren't doing it in a Christian or, for the Lord, if you will, you guys would be top notch in the secular genre, if you will.
Well, I think that, Ron, I think that's because of both of our club background.
Yeah.
We in clubs, you've got to be good, or I was joking about you're going to get a beer bottle or something thrown at you, kill or be killed, but it happens. And you've got to be really good because the bar is so high. And when we came out of that, it was just like muscle memory, you have to put on a really stellar program.
Yeah. There. Okay. Well,
there we are.
What would you say this year, or how old were you guys there?
Around 79, 80. This is when we were doing Christian stuff.
Okay.
That's right. I think I'm holding my Martin, so that would have been 79 or 80. The Martin B28.
Very good.
Yeah.
Nice vest there, Bob.
That's during Dan Rupple, the Tom Selleck years.
Right. Oh, okay. Now
look at this.
This is I think this is sophomore in high school, Bob.
Yep.
We were singing together in the Downey Talent Contest. So of course we thought, we need a publicity shot, and we stole a chapter from the Eagles or Crosby, Stills, Nash, and we thought, this will look really cool, man. Right. Two teenagers sitting on train tracks. Behind the Wonder Bowl in Downey.
It looked like Wagon Wheel Charlie there, kind of.
And check this out, and Dan can confirm this. We did sort of. I don't know if we did it on purpose, but we wound up by default kind of doing Kingston Trio type shirts.
Yeah.
And they were made by his mom.
Oh, those are striped matching shirts. I didn't notice that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's what you did.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. That's us doing our Sears catalog pose.
That's right. just a couple gentlemen out on the town.
Yeah.
Yeah. That probably was in the early. There we go. Yeah, right. That's the one.
Yeah, you've changed quite a bit since then.
Quite a bit. We won't get into that story. Hey, there I am
with the very legendary Bob Barker. Is Bob still alive? He's got.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. And his birthday is in December. And I was thinking about it just the other day. I could be wrong, but I think he's going to be 94 or 5.
Oh my God.
And I was the supervising producer of The Price is Right for over 10 years. Yeah. I produced about 1,200 episodes of The Price is Right, so I can spin the big wheel in my sleep or play Plinko. But I had a wonderful relationship with Bob Barker, as well as the other 100 people on the crew. They're still family to this day of Price is Right.
And true to Mr. Barker's advice, Dan has spayed and neutered more pets than you can even count.
It's a hobby.
Marisa, my assistant, is the younger generation, and she said, she looked at that picture because we were getting ready for this, and she said, I think I know who that is. And I said, well, Bob Barker is one of the most iconic television personalities. And I said, well, he's done The Price is Right, but those of us in you and our age group goes back to
Truth or Consequences.
Truth or Consequences.
Yeah, back in the 60s. And he's a consummate professional. I mean, he's just a treasure. Yeah. And there's Bob off of looks like a contact sheet from.
That is at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa during my bloated Kenny Loggins days.
Look at that! Yeah, look at that hair, the shag haircut. It's just a great shot of you, Bob. And there you are, sporting the vest again, and that's a great photo of you.
It takes you about 5 or 10 years to realize that the vest really doesn't hide the big guy thing very well.
Oh, okay. I got a comment on this article. I got a comment on this. Amy Grant's, I believe it was her second concert, was opening for Isaac Airfreight. So through those first years, we did a few shows with Amy Grant. Only a couple she opened for us very quickly. We were like fifth of the bill to her. Sure. But Bob and I, at that same time, we had a small home group together. Yeah. And there was about five or six of us couples, and we'd meet every week. And every once in a while, Bob would kind of moan or complain about, man, I'd like to at least meet Amy Grant, let alone I'd love to tour with her. I'd love to, I just love to do opening act or get her my song or something. And pretty soon Bob gets on her radar, and he's touring all over the world with her.
Is that right?
Oh, he did so many shows with her, and she loved Bob's music and really admired his songwriting.
Oh, how could you not? And I saw an Isaac Air Freight skit with Amy playing the foil in there, and
that was a show we did called More Than Music. It was Isaac Air Freight. I wrote the show, and then it was Isaac Air Freight, Russ Taff, Dave Boyer, and Amy, and they would of course do the music, the singing. It was a variety show, and then we would do sketches, and sometimes Russ Taff would be in them. Many times Amy Grant would be in them, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay,
Now, there
you guys are.
Okay, I got to tell this story too, Ron. I don't want to dominate this, so Bob, you can speak in too. My wife Peggy has gone through 5 bouts of cancer. She was first diagnosed in 1991, and the doctors gave her 5 years to live. Of course, praise the Lord, she's still strong and doing well today, all these years later. But on one of the trips to UCLA for one of her surgeries, there's flowers everywhere. And Bob shows up with a bag of flour, and it was like perfect.
A bag of flour.
A bag of flour. It was perfect. Here, I brought you some flour. And it was just perfect because, it's a sad moment. She's struggling and, had a serious surgeries and followed by radiation or chemo or whatever it might be at the time. And, Bob, just in his wonderful sense of humor and friendship, kind of broke the tension. So flash forward to that picture. And that was what year, Bob? 14?
It was June 2014.
Yeah. And Bob had open heart surgery.
Yes.
And in fact, I was there at the hospital with Elena, his wife, through 6 hours, however long we were there. We were there all day long. It was a long surgery. So when he recouped, I showed up at his house with my bag of flour.
Your bag of flour. Oh, you guys. Well, all right. Can we do a little diversion here, Bob? Do you have your guitar nearby?
Sure.
Okay. You know what? I know I always ask you for this song, but for those of you that are not familiar with Bob, who might be watching tonight, this is my absolute favorite song, my absolute favorite Bob Bennett song is You're Welcome Here. And I know you're probably sick of playing it because you've probably played it thousands of times. But you know what? I find that song such a tender confession of our.
Which one?
You're welcome here.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
He wants you to do Dragnet.
Yeah. I don't even know how I would do it. Anyway.
This song's just so tender to me. I think it's just a real truthful piece that you.
Okay. Lord, I hear you knocking. You've been knocking at the door. How long have you been waiting? Seems I never really heard you before. I've kinda let the place go. I'm ashamed at what you'll find. But you can make yourself at home if you're sure that you don't mind. 'Cause when I cry, the roof leaks. When the wind blows, the walls are weak, but a house is known by the company it keeps. And I feel better now that you're near, and I want to make it clear. Jesus, from now on, you're always welcome here. There are dark rooms deep inside me where light has never shone, and I tried to hide inside them, but I guess you've always known that one day you would call me a night awakened from my sleep, and you'd take me just the way I am, and you'd promise me you'd keep me. 'Cause when I cry, the roof leaks, and when the wind blows, the walls are weak, but a house is known by the company it keeps. And I feel better now that you're near, and I want to make it clear, Jesus, from now on, you're always welcome here. Jesus, from now on, you're always welcome here.
Love that song.
Yeah.
Folks, that's the wonderful voice and guitar work of Bob Bennett. What a great song.
Thank you, brother.
You know, one of the things that happens when we do this is the hour just seems to go so quickly. We've got about 15 minutes left. What do you say we go to some audience questions?
Would love to.
Excellent.
Okay, Marisa, what do we have? Let's see. We've got one from Ian Hayden. Hi, Ron, Bob, Dan. Bob, what's your favorite song you've released? Dan, what's your favorite Isaac Air Freight routine?
You know, I always avoid this, not to be cranky or mean or anything, but it would be like naming a favorite child if you picked a favorite song. But here's what I would say. I always tell people that if I had one song that I hope outlives me and one recording that I hope gets heard by the most amount of people, it would probably be a Man of the Tombs.
Oh, yeah.
Man of the Tombs demands a lot. It's like a 6.5-minute song.
Yeah.
And you sort of have to know a little bit about it. But I think that may be, you know, something that I hope outlasts me. We'll see.
Yeah. Great song. Great song. Dan, how about you?
My favorite Bob Bennett song.
Yeah, let's all talk about
Man of the Tunes. It is. Yeah. Seriously, I occasionally Bob will come over when I have a home group, and he'll do a little concert in the house, and I always ask him to do Man of the Tunes, and I can't help but cry by the end of it. Yeah. It is such a touching, emotional song. But it's hard to say because it's kind of like your kids. You love all the sketches we did. I would probably say, because I think it's probably the most clever, is Back from the Future, which is a takeoff on Back to the Future, where Marty McFly goes back to his great-grandfather, the 97th Power, Moses McFly, and Moses prayed to stand up to Pharaoh, who's Biff. And I thought that was, even though I wrote it, I think it was pretty clever, and I always like that one. Yeah.
Now the one I think for my, it would have to be in the top 10 for me is Prodigal Joe.
Yeah, that would be my second favorite.
It was so well conceived and well done. I mean, but then the other thing, one of my secret favorites, and it may be 10, 15 years since I've heard it. You had a bit on one of the records called Woodstock Now, right?
Yeah, that was one that was had a little bit of pathos to it.
That's why, because you guys could pull that off. That's why. And forgive me for interrupting.
No, it was a little more serious, and it was about these two guys, kind of drifting, and they were just sitting in a bar drinking and talking about a buddy who got saved, and kind of realizing they start by making kind of fun of him, and they realize, man, his life is pretty full. So that was a real departure for us. It wasn't really a hysterically funny sketch.
Well, it showed
the depth of their writing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I do recall about it. It's very poignant that way. But Dan, your partners, Larry and
Dave Toole.
And who was the other fellow?
Dave Toole.
Yes. Where did they move on into comedy? Where did they?
No, they didn't go into to comedy. Dave started playing in a blues band. In fact, I went and saw him at a club not too far from my house, playing harmonica and singing. And Larry and I are still very close. I talk or see Larry quite often. He's still other than Bob, who goes back to, like we said, about 11 years old. I met Larry in 10th grade. So he's my second longest friend.
Yeah. Wow. Let's talk a little bit about your radio show, because we kind of skipped over that. Rich Bueller, the late Rich Bueller, who had an iconic Talk from the Heart for so many years on it was K-Bright, wasn't it? KBRT. Yeah. And he asked you to come on, and you guys did the mornings with Dan and Bob, and you guys did that for a couple of years. What was that like? Was it
Kids in Candy Store? Man, we had so much fun. It's like we could do the craziest thing we wanted to do. We had a mixture of really serious interviews. We interviewed Pat Robertson and Chuck Colson, and we had some real serious interviews. But we just kind of went for it, and we did what became later, people like Howard Stern, or what Mark and Brian here in the LA market, kind of that morning zoo. We were doing it in Christian radio. And you mentioned Rich Bueller, our wonderful friend. Rich he would really deep dive into people's personal problems and did kind of counseling on his show. So we decided to spin it, and we did a segment called Let's Not Bother Rich. And people it's like, call in with the most trivial, foolish, little nitpicky things. Ask us. We don't want to bother Rich. And
they call in and say, when I'm making ranch dressing, do I use buttermilk this is the kind of stuff we would do. Let's not bother Rich.
Yeah. But the funniest stuff, Bob and I would drive together because we lived almost next door to each other in Downey. So we would drive at 4 a.m. to KBRT, and we would kind of dream up these things, and we would find out that it's National Bowling Day or something.
Right.
And so I would leave the studio and go out to my desk phone, and I would call in as Hubert Dijkstrom, expert on bowling. And then the next week it would be National Pancake Day. Yeah. Hubert Dijkstrom.
Hubert Dijkstrom, right.
Yeah. And it was all ad lib. We didn't plan it at all. And we just went. But here's the really funny part, Ron.
Yeah.
People started saying, we think that's Dan, because he doesn't ever sing. So Bob and I go in the studio, and we cart up me in my regular voice saying, oh, that's a good point. And so Bob's
I'm cueing this.
Cueing him. And now our audience couldn't figure, they had no idea what was going on.
Well, I know we're running out of time, but one of the funniest things, I will never forget this as long as we live, and I'll make it as short as I can. There was a guy who had basically predicted that the rapture was coming on such and such a date, and we interviewed him on the show, and that's a whole other story I'll tell you off air sometime, Ron. It's pretty funny. But as it turns out, somebody got under this guy's skin, and he actually named a day and a date, and it was during our air shift. So we decided that it was going to be the Mornings with Dan and Bob Rapture show. And we, all morning long, it's like, well, what's the traffic out there like? Oh, it's going to be pretty bad in about an hour and a half, because all those people are going to be gone out of their cars right now. And, we just milked this thing for all the truth. But what we did is, when the actual moment came that the rapture was supposed to occur, we played the theme from Rocky, Gonna Fly Now. And then we did about a minute or a minute and a half of dead air before we came back up.
Yeah, I thought that you're going to go radio silence there.
Yeah. So that was one of our finest moments, I believe.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, we've got one here from Warren Sellers. Bob, do you still have that Martin?
I do. It's in the family. Before my oldest son Paul deployed to Iraq in 2003. I said to myself, this wait till I die, give my kids stuff thing. I don't like that program that much.
Right.
So I actually gave my son Paul my Martin D28, but it's still in the family, and I can borrow it whenever I want. But yeah, that's an extraordinary guitar.
Okay. Here's one from our dear friend we all know, Scott Wesley Brown. Didn't I open for you guys before you opened for Amy?
Did
Well,
you?
I don't know. I don't know which one of us he's asking, but we definitely did some concerts with Scott. It was a blast. But I can't verify that we didn't open for him.
Uh-huh.
And see, what Dan didn't tell you is when we worked at Licorice Pizza in the record store and were just starting to circle around church and stuff, we ordered all the Jesus music albums into the store. Right. And we had a better Jesus music section than like the Bible bookstore down the street. Yeah. And so we found out that the same people that would come in and pick up Frampton Comes Alive or Leonard Skinner would walk over and buy Daniel Amos or buy so-and-so.
Yeah.
And we found out. And so I have real firm memories of ordering in and selling Scott Wesley Brown albums. He was on Sparrow.
Yeah. And not only that, Jim, see, we were hippies. Then we both got saved while we were working at Licorice Pizza. And Jim Greenwood, the owner of Licorice Pizza, it was a chain. He sent out a memo and he said, I want every store in the chain to carry Christian records because they're selling like crazy in the Downey store. And if you have any questions on what to order, contact Dan Rupple or Bob Bennett. Yeah. And so it was almost like this ministry before we got into our respective careers.
So there would, and we would get a chance to play in the store. So somebody would be playing Thin Lizzy, and then all of a sudden it would be, like Barry Maguire.
Yeah.
And it drove them nuts, of course. It drove them nuts.
Right.
But it was fun.
Yeah. Right. That's great. And that was kind of right on the heels of the Jesus movement. So it was a real burgeoning market, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to assume this one's tongue-in-cheek from Lauren Smart. And
that's my daughter.
Child. Oh, this is your daughter.
This is my daughter.
Okay, I didn't know by the last name. Okay.
I will say, Lauren, I'll avoid that and say my favorite daughter is Lauren Smart.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, by the way, Ron, I have 3 really funny kids. Lauren is by far the funniest. After I left CBS, I produced 150 comedy videos for digital media, and I put Lauren in a number of them. And no script, just ad lib. I'd say, "Honey, I want you to do this, and come in. And I'm going to do this, and you do this, and do this." And she is hysterical. I truly believe if the Lord, and God had much better plans for her, but if the Lord had led her to try out for Saturday Night Live, I think she would have been a real star. She is so good.
She's not in the entertainment industry right now.
No, not at all. Not at all. Her husband's a worship leader, though.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, here's one from a friend we're all friends with, is Susan Leon Logie. I know he has a favorite daughter.
Yep.
Bob, you tell the story of Susan from Whittier.
Well, the way that we met Susan from Whittier was people would call into our show, and we actually got some of the same cast of characters calling in. So we didn't have to make up people or have actors or anybody. We actually, some of our audience became part of the program. And Sue used to call in all the time. Well, when the Whittier quake hit, Dan and I were on the air, literally broadcasting. We've got an air check of Dan during the earthquake doing a commercial.
Yeah, and by the way, she was known to our audience not as Susan Logie, but as Susan from Whittier.
As Susan from Whittier.
Right. Yeah.
And so when this earthquake happened and we, the building was still standing, we got back on the air and stuff, we had people calling in saying, is Susan from Whittier okay? And I think Susan actually called in and gave us a report. So
did she really?
That's the kind of thing we had to do. But that's is that how we met them? We didn't know them before that.
No, the way we met was really wonderful. She off air had asked where I went to church, because often I would reference my church. And it was an Easter Sunday, and it was we were doing, church in the park.
Yeah.
And you know how they say everybody stand and meet the people behind you or whatever. Sure. We turn around and it's Susan and her husband Chris, and they said, "We know your voice." And she said, "Are you Dan Rupple?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said, she goes, "I'm Susan from Whittier." And that's how we became friends, and we've been lifelong friends. In fact, I saw Chris and Susan had lunch with me yesterday.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Susan, Susan goes back. Oh my gosh, when I started in ministry back in the mid 70s as a college career pastor, she was there at Whittier Calvary Chapel at the time.
Oh,
And,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Susan. Susan is a lovely and unique individual. She's just fun to be around, isn't she?
Absolutely. You know, I want to get. I know we're running out of time. I got to tell one quick story.
Sure.
It's just an unbelievable is it synergy? Am I using the right word, Bob? Of our lives.
Yes.
But you know, you read that thing, Ron, of how, you know, I came to Christ, Bob came to Christ. I started with Maranatha, Bob, you know, our kids are everything. But one of the most uncanny things was Bob's dad died. And when did our dad say? 93?
It was November 10th, 1994.
Okay. And Bob flew up to his parents' house. This is before cell phones, and for the funeral.
Right.
And a couple of days later, he's still up there. They haven't had the funeral yet. My dad died.
Oh my.
And so right after my dad dies, I go to the phone landline and I call his mom's house. And I said, Bob, I know you're getting ready to leave the house for his dad's funeral. And I said, my dad just died. And it's like, wow, how many parallels are we going to have in our lives? You know,
I flew back down and was honored to sing at the funeral. I flew back down and did that. So it
was great.
Wow. Well, as we close, guys, let's turn it to a little bit of faith here, because faith has been the foremost thing in your life and your careers. How has faith steered your career?
Well, I mean, the way that I came to faith, a serious faith, I was born and raised in church, but I had estrangement from it. And is Dan had a copy of Good News for Modern Man. And after I borrowed his unauthorized, he actually went out and bought me a Bible and brought it home. We weren't even really practicing Christians yet. And he was already evangelizing. He went out and bought me a New Testament that I started reading. And what I realized is that my beef with religion and with some of the oddities of that had zero to do with Jesus. And so I always encourage people, until you get to know what's what, get to know Jesus first, and then the other things will make a lot more sense. They may not all be good, but they'll be a lot more understandable.
Yeah.
Once you get to know who Jesus is, what his character is, what he's done for us. And so in our culture, I almost think that evangelism carries a first step of debriefing. Here's the stuff that's not important, and here's some of the stuff that is.
Yeah.
And so that's what brought me to faith, is reading all about Jesus and saying, this is nothing that I had a problem with. And that led me to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mentioned my journey of spiritualism and the Baha'i faith, and another component in it was I went to see the movie Jesus Christ Superstar, which is theologically as wrong as it can be. And but I saw it. Bob and I had a friend who managed HT. You may be watching, Harold Taylor. Managed a movie theater just walking distance from my house. So I went back and saw Jesus Christ Superstar 7 times in a row. And what happened, Ron, is it created, even though it was totally wrong, it created a fascination in me for who this Jesus was. And when I read that scripture on that fateful night, I just fell in love with the person of Jesus. And what it's done in my life, and it's an understatement to say, it gave me purpose and a true north and a light and life to follow after. But as far as what it's done to my career and my craft, both Bob and I see ourselves as artists, and we don't say that with all this lofty ego, attached to it. But an artist writes what is filling their soul. They write from the heart. And when the kingdom of God fills your heart, you can't help but express it in every creative way that God has talented you with. In my case, comedy. In Bob's case, music. And it's just a reflection of what we fill our hearts with. From the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, or the craft, shines forth or reflects. And that's really been the secrets to our lives as well as our careers.
Yeah. Well, folks, you are looking at two legends here in the Christian realm, in not only entertainment but ministry. These guys have brought the gospel to so many people over the years. And if you're watching tonight and you don't have a faith, or maybe your faith is a bit shipwrecked over the years, so many of us go through things like that. But the scripture tells us that if we confess with our mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in our heart that God raised him from the dead, then we will be saved. And he makes that promise to all of us. He's made it to Bob. He's made it to Dan. He's made it to me. And God is faithful at his word. And if we open our heart and ask him in, he'll come in. And you'll have that great faith. If you pray that prayer tonight, email us at theupperroompresents.com. I'm sorry, what is there? It is prayer@theupperroompresents.com. We'd like to know. And if you just like prayer, we will pray for you. Send us a prayer request. And if you come to Christ and you don't have a Bible, we'll send you a Bible. And because that's what this is all about. We have fun. We talk about all these fun things. And there's a joy in faith. There's a joy. And he wants to have that with you. Bob, Dan, you guys, I say this all the time, but the hour goes by so doggone quickly. We can go into so many other things, and I always over prepare because I've got all these pages of notes, and but there's so much to explore. But you guys are a treasure, and thank you so much for being a part of what we do here.
All right, thank you, Ron, for having us. We really appreciate it.
We do. We really, really appreciate it. It's obvious how much Bob and I love each other and all we've walked through together, the good, the bad, the ugly. But also we really treasure your friendship, Ron, and we admire all you've done in keeping, especially contemporary Christian music, alive, and keeping our community together here in Orange County that was birthed way back in the early days of Calvary Chapel.
Yes. Well, thank you. And I feel the same way, guys. Thank you so much. Folks, next week, we will be interviewing. Do we have that to come up? No, sorry, not next week. This is the week after. This will be November. Well, I think we've got the dates wrong. It's not next week. We got the dates wrong there. That's my mistake. I gave that to Marisa wrong. But Buck Storm, and we'll talk a little bit more about him. He's coming up on, I think it's November 2nd. We'll have to correct that. But
he is a buddy, and he is a wonderful musician and a wonderful novelist. He
is. He's been at the Upper Room a couple times, and we're looking forward to having him. So anyway, guys, thanks again, and we'll talk soon. We got to do this again and get in.
Love to.
Stuff. Yeah.
We can fill another hour easily.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Folks, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week on the Upper Room Presents live stream at the Upper Room Presents. Take care. God bless you.